Losing interest in things you once wanted is one of the most confusing experiences people have. It doesn't feel like failure. It doesn't feel like sadness. It doesn't even feel dramatic. It feels quiet. You look at things that once mattered deeply and notice that nothing pulls at you the same way. The desire is gone. The urgency is gone. The emotional charge has faded. And because wanting is often tied to identity, this loss can feel destabilizing. People ask themselves questions they don't know how to answer. What changed? What happened to me? Why don't I care anymore? Was I wrong before, or am I wrong now? To understand why you lose interest in things you once wanted, it helps to understand where wanting actually comes from. Wanting is rarely just about the object or outcome. It is about what the object or outcome represents. People want things because they believe those things will resolve tension. They want relief. They want confirmation. They want safety, recognition. They want coherence. The thing itself is often secondary. When the internal tension changes, the desire attached to it dissolves. Earlier in life, many wants are fueled by incompleteness. You want because you feel unfinished. You strive because you believe something is missing. You chase because you think a rival will stabilize you. This does not mean the desire is foolish. It means it is functional. Desire organizes energy around a perceived lack. As growth occurs, that sense of lack often changes shape. Sometimes it shrinks, sometimes it relocates, sometimes it disappears entirely. When the lack dissolves, the desire that depended on it has nowhere to attach. This is often misinterpreted as loss of ambition. In reality, it is loss of necessity. Another reason people lose interest in things they once wanted is that they outgrow the emotional contract associated with the desire. Many desires come with unspoken agreements. If I achieve this, I will feel worthy. If I get there, I will finally relax. If I obtain this, I will be safe from judgment. If I reach that point, I won't have to prove myself anymore. These agreements are rarely conscious, but they are powerful. Growth disrupts them. You begin to see that no outcome can permanently deliver what the agreement promised. That relief is temporary. That validation fades. That safety cannot be outsourced to achievement. Once you see this, the desire loses credibility. You are not rejecting the goal. You are rejecting the promise attached to it. Another factor is that growth changes your relationship to time. Earlier wanting is future-oriented. You live ahead of yourself. You imagine what life will be like once something happens. The future acts as a container for hope. As understanding increases, the future loses some of its emotional leverage. You stop projecting fulfillment forward. You become more present, whether you intended to or not. When fulfillment is no longer deferred, many desires lose momentum. This can feel like stagnation. But stagnation implies blockage. What is happening instead is grounding. You are no longer leaning on imagined futures to justify present effort. Another reason interest fades is that repetition becomes visible. Before growth, repetition is disguised by anticipation. Each attempt feels new because the outcome is still imagined as different. After growth, repetition looks like repetition. You see patterns. You see cycles. You recognize how often the same effort produces the same result. This does not make the activity meaningless, but it removes novelty as a motivator. Without novelty, desire weakens. Another subtle shift occurs when identity loosens. Earlier desires are often identity-driven. You want to be a certain kind of person. You want to live up to an image. You want to confirm a story about who you are. As clarity increases, identity becomes less rigid. You are less invested in maintaining a particular narrative. You are more comfortable being undefined. This reduces the pressure to pursue desires that existed primarily to support an identity. You are no longer chasing an image of yourself, so the goals attached to that image lose relevance. People often experience this as confusion. They ask, if I don't want that anymore, who am I? The answer is usually simpler than expected. You are someone no longer organized around proving something. Another reason you lose interest in things you once wanted is emotional saturation. Some desires run on intensity. They are fueled by longing, frustration, and dissatisfaction. As emotional regulation improves, those emotions soften. When the fuel source diminishes, the desire stalls. This does not mean the desire was unhealthy. It means it was temporary. Temporary desires often serve a developmental purpose. Once that purpose is fulfilled, they dissolve. Trying to revive them feels forced. Another overlooked aspect is that growth reduces fantasy. Earlier wanting often contains an element of fantasy. Not unrealistic fantasy, but idealized expectation. You imagine how things will feel, how you will be perceived, how life will change. Growth replaces fantasy with realism. Realism is stabilizing, but it is not intoxicating. Without fantasy, many desires lose their emotional charge. This can feel disappointing. People assume disappointment means something went wrong. Often, it simply means illusion ended. Another reason interest fades is that you become more sensitive to cost. Earlier desires focus on payoff. Later awareness includes trade-offs. You notice what a pursuit demands: time, energy, attention, compromise. You are no longer willing to pay prices that once felt acceptable. This is not a loss of drive. It's a refinement of values. But refinement can feel like emptiness before it feels like direction. People often attempt to reignite old desires by revisiting them intellectually. They remind themselves why they wanted something. They list benefits. They rationalize effort. This rarely works. Desire does not respond to argument. It responds to alignment. If the internal alignment is gone, the desire does not return. Another common reaction is panic. People worry that losing desire means losing momentum, that without wanting, they will drift, that life will shrink. This fear is understandable. Desire has been the engine for much of their life. Without it, the system feels offline. What is actually happening is a transition between engines. The desire-driven engine is shutting down. The choice-driven engine has not yet engaged. Choice-driven motivation is slower, less dramatic, more selective. It does not flood the system with urgency. It operates quietly. Until it activates, things feel flat. Another reason the phase feels unsettling is that desire once provided structure. Wanting told you where to focus, what to prioritize, what to say no to. Without strong desire, everything feels equally weighted. This creates indecision. Indecision is often mistaken for apathy. In reality, it is a temporary lack of hierarchy. You are learning how to choose without craving as a guide. This takes time. It is also important to recognize that some desires were never truly yours. They were inherited, absorbed, modeled. You wanted what your environment rewarded, what your culture celebrated, what your peers pursued. Growth exposes this. When external reinforcement weakens, borrowed desires fall away. This can feel like loss, but it is also a form of honesty. You are no longer chasing something just because it was presented as desirable. Another aspect of losing interest is the reduction of emotional contrast. Earlier desires create highs and lows, anticipation, excitement, disappointment. As emotional regulation improves, these swings flatten. Life becomes more even. Evenness can feel dull even if you are accustomed to intensity. But intensity is not the same as meaning. Meaning often emerges after intensity subsides. People sometimes try to recreate desire by introducing chaos, new goals, new problems, new identities. This provides temporary stimulation, but it rarely restores genuine interest. Interest cannot be manufactured. It emerges from congruence. Congruence between values, energy, and reality. Until that congruence forms, the absence of desire feels like emptiness. This phase cannot be rushed. If you force desire, you create resentment. If you suppress the loss, you create numbness. The loss of interest is not asking you to replace what you wanted. It is asking you to pause, to let old motivations clear, to allow space for different ones to appear. Eventually, interest returns, but it returns differently. Not as obsession, not as urgency, not as longing. It returns as quiet preference. You notice what you are drawn to without effort, what holds attention without strain, what you return to naturally. These interests may look smaller, less impressive, less ambitious, but they are sustainable. If you have lost interest in things you once wanted, the most accurate interpretation is not that you were broken. It is that a phase completed. An old desire fulfilled its function. An old motivation expired. An old story lost relevance. What comes next will not announce itself loudly. It will feel understated, almost too ordinary to notice at first. But it will be real. And real interest does not need intensity to survive.